YouTube? Welcome back to another Lucky Man survival video.
So today, I thought it'd be a little bit of a treat for you guys for us to be discussing vehicle maintenance and things you can do to keep your vehicle up to par in case of emergencies. That way you have, less breakdowns, less mechanical issues. And of course, we do have our resident certified mechanic here. So Parker's going to go through with us and talk about simple things you can do to keep your vehicle up to par. We'll be discussing some things you can do to manage your vehicle to keep away from high paying fixes, which, if any of us are real preppers, we're trying to save some money. Another thing is being able to make sure that the vehicle is in the best condition for the longevity of your vehicle as well, because as you all know, when shit hits the fan, you want a running vehicle.
Yeah. Now today we're not going to really go into how to fix certain stuff, but I am going to show you, and John as well, how to check for certain stuff. Pretty much checking your regular oil level, transmission, power steering, anything you can check yourself. We're going to try and show you how to check that real nice and easy here.
Yeah. And I'm just going to kind of go through, ask questions that you guys might have. If you guys aren't savvy, like for me, I'm good with vehicles, but I have a brother who fixes cars, so I just call his number. But not everyone has that in their life. So, I'll be asking some questions that you guys might have to him while he's doing the fixes, and he'll show you how to read the levels. Also, we're also going to be talking about some standard maintenance, like knowing when to change your tires. If we can, trying to show you when to change your brakes. Just simple standard fixes like that today. So let's get to it, guys.
All right. So here you can see the engine of John's truck. Now, I know this is a truck. Some of you may not have trucks. You may have some kind of sedan, maybe a coupe. But all in all, the basic checking will be relatively the same regardless. So you have stuff like for instance here, your power steering. Now, power steering, for the most part, is an easy check. On power steering, which is what your vehicle uses to help you steer it, power steering will either have a dipstick on the cap that you check, or like John's here, his has an actual gauge on the side of the reservoir that lets you know where you're at. So you can see from his, if you shake it a little bit, I can see that his is right halfway between min and max.
So what would be a telltale sign that you are running out of brake fluid, or sorry, steering fluid?
So you'll know if you're running low on power steering fluid if your steering starts to get really hard and you have to put a lot more muscle into turning right or left. That's generally the only way to know without checking, although it is something I say you should check your fluids once a week. Next thing we're going to go over here is right here. You can see this is the oil dipstick. Yes, that is the actual term. Now, for oil, you have to check it with the engine off, and you have to wipe it off once, put her back in there, and then when you take it out, you will actually be able to see the oil level. And as you can see from this, the low indicator is that little dot there, and the full indicator is this dot here. John is just at full, so he is perfect on his oil. And
that's because I have a brother who tells me to check it.
And from the consistency of the oil, you can actually see he got it changed not too long ago. It's still very clear. It's still got that nice golden brown color to it. It's not black. It doesn't smell burnt. So you can tell he's in good sorts with the oil.
What are some ways you can tell if you are running low on oil, or maybe that you need an oil change?
So oil changes, you need to get them every 3,000 miles. I don't care what your car says. You should be getting your oil change every 3,000 to 5,000 miles, regardless of whether you put it synthetic, anything, 3,000 to 5,000 miles or 3 months.
Now, what are some benefits to keeping your oil kept up on?
The better you are at maintaining your oil, the longer your engine will actually last. Not maintaining your oil can damage the engine. Even if you go over by only like 1,000 of your recommended oil change, you can start to corrode the engine very slowly, and if you consistently don't stay on top of it, you will eventually run into an issue with maybe seizing in the engine or just
Now, is the
malfunctions.
seizing an engine happen because you are out of oil?
If you are out of oil, you are most likely going to seize your engine. Even if you just have to take it somewhere to get filled, I would definitely go and try and buy the oil before you even drive it anywhere. Otherwise, get it towed. Starting the engine at all when there's no oil in there is a major risk factor for your engine.
Now, what are some signs that maybe you have an oil leak?
The only real signs that you have an oil leak is if you can walk up to your truck and you smell just burning oil. I don't really have a great way to describe what that smell is, but another way for if you don't have the mechanic's nose, as John calls it, is to look under your car. If you see a spot on your driveway
Like
where
an
you
oil
park,
stain on the cement.
yeah, if you see like an oil stain on the cement and it's dark brown, that usually means your oil is leaking. And if it's a big puddle over one day, you really got to check it. Make sure you're not low and definitely see if you can get it fixed. A lot of the time you'll have what's called oil seepage, which isn't a dire issue. It actually happens to, from working in the industry, I'd say 90% of the cars that came in had some kind of oil seepage from gaskets. It's just something that happens over time. Usually it's an easy fix. A lot of the time it's the oil pan gasket. But like I said, that's more fixing stuff. But you should be checking your oil once a week. You should come out, take a paper towel, wipe it, put it back in, check it, see where you're at, see if it smells burnt, see if it's bad.
So what's the next one we got?
All right, so our next one here is going to be brake fluid. So brake fluid is actually just almost all the time is going to be look at the side and see. It's going to be almost all the time look at the side here and see. It should have some indicator of minimum and maximum amount to tell you how much you got. If you can see here, John's a little bit more toward the minimum. That is quite normal. So with brake fluid, it'll actually change the levels of fluid you have depending on how new your brake pad life is.
Okay. And what are some indicators that that's running out?
So usually your issue isn't going to be that running out. Usually your issue is going to be that getting oxidized and turning bad. So what that generally means is oxygen gets in there and it lets the brake fluid, more air is in there. So the brake fluid no longer has this rigidity to it, because essentially brake fluid is hydraulic fluid. It's very similar in its form and function. So it needs to be no air bubbles. It needs to be very impactful when you press on that brake. You can generally tell it's going bad by looking at it. You'll usually see it's discolored really bad. Another indicator is when you press on your brake pad or your brake pedal, sorry, you'll notice it's very, what we call spongy. And if you've ever messed with a sponge, you kind of understand what I mean when I say it's spongy.
It feels almost kind of a bouncy feeling
Yeah.
to it. Very, very not solid and straight.
Yeah, it's not very firm when you press on the brake.
So what about the battery? What's some good things for the battery?
So a battery, unfortunately, most of the time, unless you have a battery tester, the best way to tell if a battery is bad is if your engine starts. That's just the unfortunate truth to it.
If it doesn't start.
Yeah. One thing you should be checking with your batteries specifically is look at your terminals here. If you notice, there's a little bit on John's here. Not bad, not crazy bad. It's just the corrosion from the battery acid. It seeps out, especially if you go on road trips where your atmosphere is changing a lot, or if it's getting colder, it's getting hotter. The battery will leak some of its battery acid, and you'll usually see it on the terminals here with green coloration, kind of greenish blue corrosion building up on them.
Now, what is something you can do to extend the battery life of your vehicle?
Unfortunately, the only things you can do to extend battery life generally are
Getting a more expensive battery.
yeah, getting better batteries. More high quality batteries will last you longer. The best option I have for battery life is get batteries that have good warranties. Most of the places you'll go will give you a warranty on the battery where if it goes bad in like a year, they'll replace it at no cost.
Now, is there something that you can do? Now, for us, we live in a cold climate. Is there a certain battery or something you should be looking for in a battery to make sure that it can start in cold weather? Seeing as you've always heard the phrase cold starting or
So
things like that.
absolutely not. There's no difference. The only thing that you can really do, and I'm not,
Is like crank amps, right?
no, cold cranking amps is just a requirement of specific vehicles. The only thing you can really do is, and I'm not saying these work, I don't know one way or the other, I just know that this is what they are sold to do, is they sell sleeves to go over the battery. They're supposed to generally
Insulate it.
yeah, insulate it, keep it a little bit warmer.
So you're saying now, is that available for every vehicle that's kind of modern on the market?
Generally, you can find a sleeve like that for any vehicle. It's mostly just based off battery size, not vehicle. So multiple vehicles will take the same battery,
Okay.
and they'll sell a sleeve for that size of battery.
So what do we got next?
Next thing I want to talk about is actually going to be something very common that a lot of people know the term for, and it's actually going to be our transmission fluid. So this part is going to be a little bit different. So on this vehicle, it'll also be yellow on most vehicles. A lot of vehicles make them red, which I do like. It does help you distinguish. But on John's here, you can actually see that it says trans fluid. So the transmission will usually be marked for you. And a great way to tell if you're actually checking the transmission is when you go ahead and open it up, the transmission fluid is red opposed to a golden brown look.
And that means it's good.
Yes. If it's nice red, kind of clear, like you could see through it, like a transparent red, that's very good. The signs of wear and tear on this are the exact same for oil. So if you look at the dipstick here,
And I also noticed that the dipsticks look a little different on the tip right there.
yeah, that's not for any specific reason.
No specific reason? Okay.
That's just for flair. So on this dipstick specifically, you can see it actually has the same kind of markings to indicate low, full. So in this little area here, this little crossed out section, it actually has a warning saying don't add if crosshatch area, check when hot, idling in park. So this is actually true for all vehicles. You need to check your transmission fluid when the engine's on.
So oil off, transmission fluid on.
Yes, that is the only real difference between checking your transmission and checking your oil. Now, some vehicles come with what we call a sealed transmission. Now, what that means is that the transmission is not checkable by a normal person. It doesn't have a dipstick, and it doesn't have a little valve that it goes into like this one does. Now, this is in the sealed one, so he can check it anytime he wants to.
All right.
Yeah, but they're generally very easy, nice. Same things, you want to smell it, see if you smell burnt, kind of look at it. Is it looking like it's really dark and murky? Then it might need to get swapped out or what we call a transmission flush.
And I am just exposing to everyone now that yes, my windshield washer fluid is covered by a little piece of plastic because I'm not spending money on a cap because, as Parker always tells me, there's no point in having a cap. It's not going to do anything to the engine.
Yeah, no.
That's just if you don't want the fluid going all over the place. It's basically all it's for because it's not going to hurt the engine.
The washer fluid doesn't really need a cap. And washer fluid is a fill till you feel like it kind of thing. Now, The only issue you'll really run into with washer fluid is you ran out because you're washing your windshield with it too much. Normal.
Or worst case scenario for us is in a winter storm when the windshield gets all mucked up from everything and you have to stay consistent. So if you're going on a long trip, this is something that he always told me. He always recommends checking how much washer fluid you have, especially de-icer washer fluid, because that will help not only clean off the windshield, but if you're having a heavy frost or heavy snow, it will not allow the snow to penetrate and stay solid on the windshield.
Absolutely. It's just a great way to make sure that you are seeing where you're going. Now, it is important to be able to see where you're going, but this isn't going to damage your engine if you're not checking it regularly.
Yeah, right. I think we've all been mudding before and drove home with our head out the window.
Yeah. All right. So our next thing here is actually going to be our coolant. So on a lot of vehicles, including this one, you have a coolant reservoir, which is way over by the washer fluid that you guys saw. But it's not a great indicator of what's going on with your radiator fluid. Generally, for radiator fluid and antifreeze, they are the same thing, just so everyone's aware. You want to check it directly from the engine cap over the radiator itself. Now, some things to know. Do not, and I repeat, do not check this after you have been driving. The best time to check this is fresh in the morning when you have not been doing anything, when it's been sitting all night. Now, there is a way for you to tell if it has too much pressure. If you do end up checking it after you've been driving, it's hot, it builds up pressure in there, you will find that you have started a geyser of coolant and water that goes everywhere.
What is a geyser, Parker?
You know, like Yellowstone.
So what he's saying is very, very scalding hot liquid that is pressurized will burst into your face and burn you extremely bad. He has seen it.
Absolutely. Now, if you want to check if the pressure's too much in there, you can actually find any rubber hose that goes directly to the radiator and kind of squeeze it and feel if there's too much pressure in that. If it's real firm when you push it and you can't really squeeze it tight, that means you should not open it. It is filled with pressure still, and it will burst in your face. Now, on this one, I just checked, and it doesn't have a lot of pressure in there.
Yeah, we started this truck about 2 hours ago.
So when you turn it, if there's too much pressure, you'll actually hear it start to release some of that pressure before you pull the cap off. Luckily on this one, we're good. Now, all you want to do when you're checking your radiator fluid, and you generally won't have problems with this unless you have an active leak, but you look in there, and if you can see the fluid is up toward the top, you're good. It's generally all you need to do. You need to look, see if it is the color it's supposed to be, which is different depending on which vehicle you have. John's here is green.
Yeah, it's like a lime green.
And if it's up toward the top, you're good. And you don't need to worry about anything. We actually just filled John's here
real quick. Sorry about the terrible angle, you guys, but I just want you to see this actual coolant level. So when he talks about that, he is talking about seeing liquid right at the top there, which you can see just right under that, there's fluid. So that basically is a perfect indicator that it is running properly or not doing anything like specific to damage your engine. If you don't see fluid, that is probably an indicator that you are either running low on coolant or that you may have a leak.
Yeah.
So what are some indications, maybe color changes or something, in the fluid that you can be looking for to be detecting another issue?
So generally with your fluid, you want to check the fluid itself and see what color it is, and you want to recognize that before there's an issue. That way, when there is an issue, you can tell, oh, that's a different color than what it's supposed to be. That's generally your only way to tell if there's an issue with the coloration. Now, another way to tell that there may be an issue with your coolant is if you are driving and you're noticing your vehicle overheating often or very fast.
And that is specifically an indication of the coolant itself?
Yes, the coolant or a problem with the cooling system. So If it's not the coolant itself that's a problem, it will be a problem with something the coolant's touching.
Alrighty. Is there anything else in the engine that you can check yourself that you don't need a master's mechanics degree to do?
Generally, no. On this engine itself, we've kind of covered everything that you should be checking. Of course, you should be checking your hoses and just seeing if they're really bad cracking. Any
Something
rubber
that
hoses.
he showed me is you can all see that my engine is very dirty because I'm not paying someone to clean it for me. But if you see little spots of liquid over dirt, that is an indication that there's a liquid of some sort going over that. So that's something you can look for.
So next we're going to talk about here.
Can you tell that Parker's the bougie brother and not me? I have a old ass truck and he's got the brand new 2021 Chevy Silverado. Because he likes his cars.
It's not a 2021. It's 2023. But here we're actually going to go ahead and talk about tires and brakes.
So I'm going to take the camera from him. I apologize, guys. I'm not usually the camera guy, but he has shown me how to work this thing.
So first thing we're going to talk about is your tires. You need to be checking your tire life. Anytime you go out to your car or get out of it, I would check your tires, see if they're still got some life left in them. The way you tell is if the tread here, which is this area here between these little markings, if that is deep, you're still good. And you want to check the outside here for tiny little cracks. If those tiny little cracks become big cracks,
you get a flat tire.
You'll get a flat tire somewhere and it'll run into an issue.
So just to kind of help our viewers, what's the penny test?
The penny test is when you take a penny, of which I might have one.
Because this is something for the people like me who maybe don't know exactly how good tread is.
I don't have a penny, but I have a quarter.
And for this big ass truck, it might work.
So generally you put your penny in there. Now it's not the same on a quarter, but you would put your penny in the tread there and see where it comes up to here. So on this, you saw it came up to here on his head. On a penny, it's a little bit better to tell because there's a bit more space in between the head and the edge of the coin. But on a penny, you want to have Abraham Lincoln faced upside down. And if your tread is past his head and toward the edge of the coin, you need to replace those tires.
And is that for any kind of tread, or is that more for just standard driving tread?
That's for any kind of highway tire, all season, those
so
kinds
if you
of
have
treads.
big monster trucks or mud tires,
It's completely different. Just get it checked professionally.
Yep.
Now, of course, I'm pretty sure you guys know, if you come out and you see a flat spot on the bottom of your tire, you know, hey, it's leaking, check it. One thing a lot of people don't know though, and I'll actually bring you over here to the door, and we're gonna check right in here. You can actually see that it tells you what pressures, and that's what this 35 PSI is. That is the pressure that my tires should be at. Doesn't matter what tires I put on here, but that is the poundage that I should have it.
because that's the weight bearing weight.
Now, to keep in mind that these pressures are for if you don't have add-ons like a camper or anything that adds a true amount of weight to your vehicle.
So would people create that problem with the weight?
Generally, yes. That would be something you did to your vehicle. Like if you're carrying way over your weight limit, that would cause an issue where you might need more or less
but
pressure.
having normal passengers won't.
No. The pressures in there are supposed to be able to handle anything within the truck's tonnage limit.
And that's same with standard sedans and stuff as
Yes.
well, right?
And it will be in generally the same spot. It might be on the door itself or in just the door well like mine is, but it will generally be in there. Next, we're going to go ahead and talk about the brakes. So this is something that not a lot of people actually know how to check, but it's nice and easy to see on mine. You can see on my brakes here, and they're not warm, that they are kind of glossed. So I actually would need to go get these resurfaced here soon because if you could see your reflection on the brakes, it might be time for a resurfacing, which you could take to a lot of different places and they'll do it for you. It's not usually too expensive, but it's not a service you can really do at home by yourself.
Is resurfacing a way to help with brake longevity and lifespan?
Not generally. What brake resurfacing does is it helps the rotor itself, which is that part that looks more like a mirror right now. It actually helps that get more grip on your brake pads.
So it's a safety concern, not so much a longevity concern.
Yes. Now, the longevity and safety concern is actually the brake pad here. And I'm actually going to take the camera here to show you.
So you can get a little bit further into the tire itself.
Right in there, you can kind of see the pad there where it's contacting the rotor. Now, that is actually what I'm talking about when I mean brake life. Now, some different things you can check for, or you may hear some squealing when you're braking. That usually means that the wear indicator on your brake pad is letting you know, hey, the life of this brake pad is kind of low. We should get it fixed soon.
So is there a way to, with specific servicing, a way to stop yourself from having those really high-end brake fixes?
Yes, regular maintenance on your brakes, regular checking of your brake fluid. Those are generally the way you will stop having the high-end brake fixes. Especially if you want to work on your brakes yourselves, you need to be really careful. The brake piston is actually something really easily broken. And as someone who's worked in the field, I've seen a lot of people come in because they try to do their brakes themselves and they ruined their brake piston and had to get that all replaced.
Okay.
Also, you want to make sure you're not letting your brakes get all the way low. As soon as you hear that squealing, you need to start thinking about getting them done, because that is a great indicator that it's time. If you let it get too low, you'll get to what we call metal on metal. And that is when the metal of the brake pad is directly meeting the metal of the rotor, and there's no ceramic or anything in between them. And you'll have a grinding noise, and you'll have a grinding noise and a really bad shaking when you brake.
So what you're saying is I need new brakes.
No, yours are fine.
So is there any other little tips and tricks you'd like to share with anybody?
No, generally that's the best way to tell for stuff like that. The only last thing I want to mention is actually your windshield wipers. So
Okay.
on windshields, we're actually going to show you on John's.
So we're coming back over to my truck to
Okay.
talk about windshield wipers because I need mine replaced. So it'll be perfect for him.
So you can actually see here, wipers should look like this end here, where it's nice and straight. It would make good contact with the window. But if you look here, his has bent in the middle here.
And cracks. I don't know if you guys can see
Yeah,
that.
It's kind of cracked and it's really bad. That's a great indicator that you need to replace the windshield wiper.
Another thing is if and I know this just from personal experience, especially with how many vehicles I work with at work, and I think that he can vouch for this as well, is if your windshield wiper isn't actually wiping the full surface of where it's supposed to cover,
Yeah.
then that's an indication that it's cracked and
A
busted
big
out.
sign, especially on these concave windows, which is just when the window goes like that, is the middle of these will always start to wear out before the rest of it. It's just something that happens with windows like this. Doesn't matter what wipers you get, how expensive they are, it will do that.
Alrighty, so any other tricks of the trade for us today, Parker?
No, I don't think so. We should close her up.
All right, sounds good. We'll see you guys in just a minute then.
All right, guys, but that will close us up for this one. I hope you learned something. I hope you kind of have an idea of what you should be checking and are more aware of when it's bad.
Now, just to go a little bit further into it, guys, you know, keeping up on your vehicle is not only a prepping thing, but it's also just a average person's daily routine. So even though you guys may not be preppers and you're watching this, hopefully he helped you out with learning a little bit of information about your car. You know, people like me who, you know, weren't raised really to work on cars. You know, I can work on a motorcycle any day of the week. When it comes to vehicles, however, you know, it's something that I just never really got into. I was more of the gun guy. So I hope that he was able to help you guys out with some of that. And we are going to be doing a part 2 to this video, which is things to keep in your vehicle to keep either getting you back on the road or to protect you and get you safely back home.
Exactly.
All right, guys.
So if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe.
And remember, guys, Death is the rule, but survival is the exception. We'll see you guys next time.